I've never done this before. This is really cool. Welcome.
Sorry about all the we have like 30 emails in the thread.
I know, it's so funny.
Just thank you for making time and space for all of that.
No, it's so fine. I'm honestly so excited, and I just can't wait to get talking to you guys about this.
Also, your name is so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. And so is yours. Sheila's really rare in Nigeria as well.
Thank you. I think Gazelle is even rarer. Like Sheila, the Indians, when they find me, they always have to remind me of the song. They're like, oh my God, do you know? I'm like, I do know that there is a song about Sheila Kijavali, who is too sexy for you. That is the song.
Who's Sheila Kijavali? I've never heard this.
She sang the song called My Name is Sheila Kijavali. I'm too sexy for you. And they always, like, a lot of the Indians I meet actually let me know. Not all Indians, because I'm not racist.
Do you meet any Australians?
Name. That's quite a sick track share name with. So.
Yeah, I know. And I watched her video. She's actually quite sexy. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. Yeah. Check it out. She's actually quite big. Like, she's actually a big celebrity, or she was a big celebrity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, Gazelle, how's your day going already?
My day has been quite strange. Sort of like really stop-starty. Like, I'm moving. I sort of like temporarily moved accommodation to stay at my friend's sister's place because someone in my house is like isolating, and so because of COVID, a lot of people are just like getting COVID, like dropping like flies, not literally dropping, but like temporarily dropping. And just been moving and trying to like sort out Wi-Fi and just like generally like quite boring tasks. So it's not been the most like glamorous and exciting of days, but it's fine. It's just a Monday. What about you guys?
Wow, I almost forgot it was a Monday.
Yeah. On my end, it hasn't really.
No, just giving me like Saturday energy. Everything's quite sleepy around me anyway. What about you guys?
Man, I feel like every day for me is sleepy unless I decide to not have it be sleepy. So yeah, today feels sleepy, but like in a good way. Like I don't mind it. Yeah.
Today feels for me slow. Well, I don't even need to say slow. It's just because I'm at home that I'm thinking it's slow, but it's not slow. I've actually been up since like 7, and then I stretch because I'm trying to work on my splits. So,
oh my God, how's that going?
Thank you. I just feel like trying to learn how to be a pole dancer without doing splits is like, what did I say? Being into digital humanities and not being a gamer. I think they're quite parallel, and I'm in both identities, and I just think one of them needs to like quit. I've had enough, so I'm not working towards it. I'm not putting myself under too much pressure, but it feels nice to know that like I'm intentionally working towards it. Then I've just been trying to close things more, like instead of just working on just new projects, I'm intentionally putting older projects first. Like I want to work on new things at the same rate that I'm closing off old things. So I like that I've been banging those things out. And then I've just had meetings from 10. So I've actually been very active, but because I'm at home, it feels slow. So I think trying to rephrase why being at home almost feels like I haven't been productive when I think about the facts, and I'm like, all you've done all day is produce, my dear.
Yeah. That's what you said speaks to me on so many levels, because like this year has been my year of stretching, where like physically and like mentally, where I feel like I actually just like love stretching. I've been trying to like get like working on my splits as well, working on my back bend, like all of that stuff has been actually like really fun and really sensitive. Quite like a chaotic year. And then also what you said about intentionality about finishing things or like closing things, as well as like opening up new possibilities. And it's like we're so afraid of like things ending, I think, and we're actually just like, but we don't realize like how much the close of something's connected to the opening of another thing, and how we have to like kind of like integrate that more, like whatever kind of practice that you're doing, but also just like being okay with that transition phase as well, where you're like kind of ending, but also beginning something else, and letting. Also, I think it's like letting something, the closure of something isn't just like, oh yeah, I've written this thing, I've done this project, like whatever. It's like actually like, what is that lingering thing that project gives you, that like that episode in your life, like what is it that stays, that is also important to like sit with, as well as like opening up something else. But yeah, I really like feel that as well. I think that's something I'm trying to work out.
I think for me, it's not even fear. Like, I think I used to maybe have more of that, but it's actually it's more boredom. Like, when something is in the middle, in fact, let me not even say boredom, is more that the work is the work of carrying the logistics of something from start to finish, that middle ground where there's no excitement of this is what it could be. It's like, this is what it is now. We're too far into it for it to almost be something magically different. So we have to either choose to follow through as we thought, or end it now, like not go through with it. So I always have to, I'm kind of left in that point where I have two decisions to make. Either to make it like something, whether it's not the thing I wanted in my wildest imagination, it should be something, or it should be not more than an idea. And I think I'm just trying to move things more from idea phase into tangibility phase, and just watching the difficulty, but also practicing that attention span. And knowing, and I think it's just important for me to know how much it takes to get things through, so that the next time I'm called to say yes to something, I now know like what part of my body is going to be extended for this. So I'm going to really have a better way of measuring whether it's a yes or a no, and also evaluating what my gains should be.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I really like the phrase, like the tangibility phrase. I think is what I'm also trying to get to, which I think I've had maybe like a couple of times in my life, but when you actually have something that came from inside of you, or like inside of people around you, and you can actually like see it, and it's real, and it's there, and it's like how often it's actually really difficult to get there. Underestimate that, and but also it's like the underestimation creates this, like, can create that feeling of like, shit, I need to give up, I need to change something else. As like that initial spark of like, yeah, like we could do this, like it's all amazing. But it's like also about sticking through something with the imperfections of it. And also really, like, I was like gonna say as well, I really like how we're all having this like sort of like transnational like sleepiness. Like slowness, and it's like, I feel really comfortable in this weird, like murky, slow, imperfect temporality with you guys. Nice.
I feel like that's what we try to center in the way we approach working, and just conversations and thinking about stuff, because there's a lot of emphasis on the opposite of slowness, I think.
So how would you describe yourself to my nephew? He's 3, and oh my God, he did the cutest thing yesterday. So we're watching American Dad, and then the song came on, and all of a sudden he starts singing along. It's crazy. I know it sounds normal, but like we've never heard him like sing along to anything on TV. Like, we don't even know he knows that many words. Like,
I'm stressed that American Dad.
I know, me too. But like, it's funny because his dad loves American Dad and anything Seth MacFarlane, and his mom as well has also learned to love it because they're married and they watch similar things. So you could see the sense of surprise and also pride on their faces when their son started singing, and then they were all singing along like one happy family. And I was like, damn, I don't even know the lyrics to this song. Everybody. But yeah, I think watching children or toddlers in that way is like, there's a surprising intelligence. Like they can actually follow some pretty complex things, but they also don't understand some very basic things. So describing yourself to someone who's 3 in this situation is both easy and difficult. So good luck.
That is a really, really, really interesting question. I've definitely never been asked that before. I think I'm going to ask someone else that. Sorry, I could use that as a conversation starter. I'm gonna try to just, in situations like this, it's really easy to overthink and to just like try to like come up with something really crazy and clever. And so the first thing that came into my mind was lover of vibes. Because I've been thinking a lot about like I just finished writing my dissertation, which is something that was like really close to me for a while, and I've been thinking about basically for like a whole year, and there was like a section on it that was sort of about thinking about thinking about vibrations as a kind of like metaphysics, and thinking about how they sort of engage ideas of like absence and presence, and like also kind of like blur, disturb dualities and like ways that we think and ways that we can like be with each other like around the world and stuff, through reading it through these like novelists and through other like theorists and stuff, and like a bit of like Sun Ra kind of like started that section of thinking about his work like quite a lot. So I would say that I really believe in like rhythm. Like I literally just having a conversation about rhythm before I came here with like some friends of mine. So I just think that like I'm really, as someone who like loves how like rhythm or like the pace of things can really shape how people are with each other, and I'm responsive to like changes in that as well. So I'd say like a sensitive lover of like rhythm and vibes is how I'm feeling about myself and them, but also I think
peaceful. Thank you. I'll let Aaron know.
So
how
that is exactly how I describe myself. But sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was going to ask how your dissertation went. I was meaning to ask that earlier.
How did it go? And so it definitely went. It definitely happened, but I don't have a qualitative answer. Like I don't at the moment. It kind of feels like this. It feels like there was something in my mind or something in my spirit or my body, and that thing is kind of like dislodged itself. When I think about it, it's almost like this output like thing, but I have like the ideas in my, like I still have like thoughts that I went into it, but it doesn't feel like it's like mine anymore in the same way. It feels like it's gone, which is a nice feeling. It feels like, yeah, its own thing.
Did you feel like you were constipated with it and then you took a shit? Or
I definitely felt like I was pregnant. I definitely was like, oh, this is a cliche. I was like, why should I say that? But yeah, it definitely felt like I was pregnant. And someone who like, when I'm quite stressed or I'm kind of like just frustrated, I know like such a groaner, I'm like, literally just like so many late hours me just like groaning into my laptop, being like, I need to get this out. But it does.
When you're talking, sorry, just based on what you said now, I just almost realized that sometimes education feels like an opportunity for us to like excrete our ideas. To put out, because you could just be carrying that forever. Like you could be having this idea, but like you went into a program and then it's like you submitted yourself to this prison to get something from it. Why do we do it?
Do you think everybody sees it that way, or it's like that for?
I'm curious as to how I guess Gazelle sees it.
That was really interesting, because I was actually just talking about this to the people I was like chatting to before I came on this call, about like how trying to in some ways work out the reasons why I wanted to go into academia, and like the way that we get socialized into it from a young age, which is like, oh, you're good at school, you're quiet, like you like to read, like that's who you are. Okay, now we want you to succeed, because if you don't succeed, here's all the terrible things that can happen to you. And we're your parents, we love you, we're your family, we love you, we want to prevent that from happening, we want to show that like we're a good family, we want to raise kids in this way. But this is quite a cynical reading of it, and there's like another side of it, but I'm just kind of like trying to follow this one trend of thought, and then it like And then you grow up and you're like, oh, I'm really invested in this. I love it. It brings me so much joy. But this is the way I have to do it, which is like, this is a really punishing academic institution, which forces you to, which makes you feel like work is a form of sacrifice that you have to make to get something at the end of it. So you feel like you have this carrot in front of you that's being dangled all the time, and it's just like, just push a bit harder, just push a bit harder, do it, get this idea out, and then you get it out, and it then becomes this like, there's almost like an obsolescence to it, which is kind of sad, because there's something about the way that our culture moves, where you're like, you get rid of something and then it's like on to the next thing, right? Or it like loses that initial value and importance that it had. I've been thinking about like ways going forward, ways to like lose that sense of like sacrifice, or that sense of like productive suffering in academia, in like creative work, where it's not about you needing to do something to prove yourself to someone else for it to be worthy. The work comes from somewhere of like relations and a different like relationship to it that you have. But I think I'm still in the early stages of like thinking about that. But I do want to actually invest a lot of time working out something that doesn't. There's just like this artist I love, but her name's like Carolyn Lazard, and I was actually like really interested in her work like at the start of Zone 2020 and stuff. And she wrote that like she's like trying to make art in a way that doesn't hurt her, because she's like at the same time person. It was like, it's like actually so meaningful, because I think a lot of times if you do things does hurt us, and we're like, oh yeah, I guess it's okay, like, this is how it's supposed to feel. But then maybe there's other ways of doing it.
It's such a big shift. I remember when I was doing I was about to do my thesis, because I was a theatre and dance major in college. So my piece was going to be a mix of both, I knew somehow. And then I started having day nightmares, and even just nightmares, where I would like be in a car and then I would look down and I'd realize like I had no legs. So I started having those nightmares, and I realized that I was panicked because the year before, I guess months before that, I had slipped my disc. So I had a really bad back pain, and I knew that my body wouldn't be the same. It's funny because now I take so much better care of my body because I slipped my disc. Like when I realized that my disc was slipped, I knew I couldn't take my spinal health for granted. And a lot of things have unfolded because of that. But anyway, I told my advisor that I think I'm really worried about how my thesis is going to go. And then he said, okay, how do we make something that's going to heal you instead of harm you? And I went back and I thought about it so much, and I was like, oh my God, the reason I was having these dreams actually was that I've always thought that dance was something that was supposed to take from me. Like I'm like kind of a trickster, and the more tricks that I can pull that other people can't pull makes me a better dancer. Like, so actually doing things for showmanship shows that like I work hard. I was thinking more about the performance of dance than actually the movement embedded in dance. Like I'm not supposed to care about how I feel to be a good dancer. I'm supposed to care about how I look and how it looks. And just changing the rhythm of that allowed me free myself. And I was like, if something is hurting me so bad, and it's not that there was no pain involved, it's because during the rehearsal of the performance, I ended up spraining my pelvic hip and my cheekbone. I sprained my toe. All sorts of fucking things happened during that. But like, still, they didn't happen because I was doing something outrageous. It didn't happen because I was pushing myself based on how I looked. I was getting to a feeling, and like sometimes I would need to do something that got me there. And because I'm so stuck in the feeling, like I'm so absorbed, I wouldn't even know I was injured until after the performance. So, and that like this, the way the story filled something in me gave me so much back, that like healing in fact was so easy because I was already healed before I started healing physically, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
I think this thread is really beautiful because it connects so many things on so many levels. I think it connects what we were saying earlier about slowness and the need for, taking a step back and trying to like divest from the like pace of things generally. And I think it also connects to like the questions Sheila and I have been asking for so long. And Gazelle, when you say that these are things that you started thinking about and considering, I feel like these are things that we're all like generally like we all just started thinking about, because I feel like we're now starting to really feel the effects of just like doing things in a way that harms us. And yeah, maybe we intuitively know that, this status quo is kind of weird, but I feel like now it's really coming to it's like really rearing its ugly head. And like the questions that we've been asking in our research have revolved around reverting to a model and a way, and just like an approach to doing things that honors, like that's more embodied, like honors our health, like mentally, physically, more. And so, yeah, making this comment to say that, I feel like the collective consideration of these questions is like what is going to save us. And I'm always so glad to hear that it's like being thought about and reproduced in so many different ways, in so many different levels.
Yeah, no, it makes me so happy as well to know that like you're thinking about this too, because I think that like the act of thinking is also a form of creation, where even like what you were saying, Sheila, about the kind of like getting it so deep into the feeling that you don't realize you're hurt, but it heals you and then afterwards you're able to sort of like tend to your wounds in a more like actually healing way. It's like, even though the fact that you are having to think about this is because of some kind of hurt or some kind of pain or suffering that you've experienced, well, that doing that also enables you to regenerate and to grow and like have more like kind and generative way of doing practice with yourself and like with the community of people that are around you. And it's really, really exciting that so many people are like going to be doing that and thinking about ways that we can share that, give that to each other in the future.
However, oh, sorry, I just jumped in there. I thought
No.
You mentioned regeneration and my antennas peaked because I just love that concept so much, because I think it's like just one of the most essential truths. So like just recently, I guess in your work, your practice, your dissertation, your personal relationships, like what do you find most confusing and also most rewarding about the concept of regeneration?
That is a really great question. Oh my god, I'm having so much fun. So wait, I'm just gonna get that straight. So the thing that I find most confusing and most rewarding about regeneration. Okay, the reason I love that question is because I feel like I'm always confused. Always feel like I'm encountering problems that I'm trying to work out and then realizing that there's no solution, but also working them out is what is maybe most important. But okay, so the thing that I find most confusing about regeneration, I think that I find it most confusing in my personal life and my research and creative things that I want to do, is that like there is no, the way that there isn't like a route to regeneration, that there isn't a place that there isn't like a singular place or moment where it starts from and then like echoes out or like branches out, that it can happen in like all kinds of like crevices and small places and like nodes of like things and places that we'd ignore and you wouldn't expect to look for. Because I think that in the idea of regeneration, there's this, like, I'm going to like give an example of kind of like more of like a worldly thing around me, which is like, let's say there's like a place that's like kind of like has disrepair, that it's like a building's falling down, that it's like and then like the government will be like, oh yeah, okay, like this is a slum, like the way to regenerate it is to just like get loads of investors, get loads of capitalists to like basically take over this area, ignore all the social people's lives, the history of that place, ignore everything that it's meant for the last like fucking 1,000 years that it's been there, and then just like build this new thing over what existed before. Okay, and that's regeneration, and that's like the way it's like used quite a lot in like just like normal day-to-day life, like all over the world. And then it's like, but that's not what regeneration is. Regeneration isn't about moving something from one place to another. It's not about like a fixed movement or a fixed like change. It's about the different strategies of like coexistence and like care and support and like finding beauty in places that wouldn't necessarily like tend to look for it that exist. And for me, that is what is kind of confusing, but also like really liberating about regeneration. And then like what I find really rewarding about it, I think, is teaching kind of like patience and thinking about like, again, sort of going back to this like temporality thing of this literally just because something I'm currently trying to work through, but it's like looking back on my life and like looking back on like the past 3 or 2 or 5 years or whatever, and like realizing like how much has changed and how much I could never have expected to know that will change, and that being really important for me because it's not the things that I necessarily would have like wanted to say, oh, by this time this will happen, that would be like me set, or that would be like the concrete thing that would make my life better or easier. It's more like the unexpected changes and the unexpected moments of like beauty or joy or excitement or pleasure or even pain that have like really changed me. And I think that is, it's like being patient that those things will always be there and those things will always come as long as you're following the sort of instinct or the spirit or the internal voice or whatever you want to call it, that is within you and is within everyone, and just like the world, because I think that is what the world is. But yeah, that's my answer.
Is this
rock paper scissors for who talks?
No, I'm not going.
So I just remembered my favorite Cleo Soul lyric. I love Cleo Soul, and
yeah, she's so good.
She's amazing. There's this. I'm trying to remember the exact words. There's no competition. When you trust intuition, you win. Get out the stupid system somehow. Yeah, something like that. But that's, I feel like that speaks to what you just said.
Because I think there's a version of self-belief which I can, in my own self, I can substitute for intuition. That is just, it doesn't like greed. I tell people that like every time I experience excess, just let's say in food or drink or smoke, whatever it is, I just feel so bad. Like my whole body is just irritated at what's going on. And that's part of why like I either want to throw up or I'm on the toilet because my whole body is like, what did you do? Like, as in, I'm stuffed. I need things to flow in and out of me. But what you've done is that you've blocked everything. Like, you've gone ahead and you've eaten with your eyes. You wanted to consume this thing that I guess you've been waiting for. And the anticipation has actually killed our opportunity to savor something. And that's why I love the Shakespeare word, which I've brought up many times, but I still continue to not know the particular name of the word. It's one of the words he created. But the meaning is basically a moment that after a long period of anticipation, satisfy yourself of something, but the moment you are the most satisfied is right beside the moment you are most disgusted about the thing. And it's a feeling that so many people, and it's like, why do we get there? Like, is it that there are certain things that make us feel like this, where this our satisfaction is also just right next to our disgust of them? Or is it that our concept of contentment is so broken that we're most satisfied when we're closest to being disgusted.
Yeah, I think
interesting.
I think it's somewhere there, like in the second thing you said, and like that's the problem with desire, or like that's why desire can very easily become a problem. And it's like how much emphasis and worth are you placing on an external thing? Like that discourse is a factor of how much emphasis you're placing on the external thing. And it happens because you are like that's not you're not supposed to, you have to temper it.
What do you think, Gazelle?
I think it's so and interesting. Like, so like going back to the body, I really like the metaphor they're using, and like, but the body's not a metaphor, but also like
it can be.
It's just both things, isn't it? Or like multiple things. But yeah, like how I'm trying, like I had this idea of which I didn't really follow through with, classic, of like starting a body diary, where I just like write about everything that happens to my body in one day, and doing that all the time. And the reason I can't do it is because I'm not consistent enough in anything to do that, to have that religious, that dedicated to the practice. But I did do it.
So maybe you're consistent with inconsistency.
I'm consistent with inconsistency. I'm very spontaneous. And I was doing that because I felt that there was this kind of moments of like union where the body and whatever is like the mind, intuition, whatever, spirit is just so connected, but we lose that because of the way that like society works, and we're socialized into like dividing both of those things all the time. And that maybe by like writing all the stuff that happens, I can really see what my body is trying to tell me about everything else that's going on in my life, right? And I think that like that moment, like when you feel so full and you feel so like constipated, or you feel so like blocked or stuffed up with something, is really like a kind of, and also that, like if you connect that to like the pandemic and to like what's going on now, of like breath and like people actually, the congestion that's like existing around so many places in the world right now, like that. But that's also so tied to like the kind of enormous inundation with like wealth and like objects and products and everything that currently exists. And I don't think it's like a kind of like, I don't know, mistake that we're experiencing both of those parallel at the same time, that there's something about the enormous, like whatever, the enormity of like what capitalism has like wrought on the planet, and also the very like physical manifestations of it in the theft of like our breath, our ability to breathe, or like the kind of it's darkening of like our air, like system, and like things that are so vital to our life. And so I think it's like those two things exist like so close to each other. I think it was like so spot on how we lose the beauty or become disgusted by the things that like are supposed to like satisfy our most supposedly deep-seated cravings and desires, and there's also this idea that desire doesn't have a limit, which is so I think is like what capitalism definitely is like gets us to believe, which is just like you can like there will always be like another flavor combination that we need to make of this one specific.
And when we even say capitalism, I want us to even be more specific sometimes. That sometimes when we say capitalism, I imagine some white guy in a suit. But capitalism most frequently right now is my mother or my auntie. Like, these are very Igbo women in their very like Igbo ways. Very much like. So that makes me sometimes even though I understand how deeply capitalism has infiltrated society, I still see some things that they believe because their mother made them believe it, and their mother made us believe mother. All of that was, you can trace it back pre-colonially. So there's some desires that are also oppressive that aren't in the nature capitalist. They're oppressive because I think sometimes people aren't willing to share a world where different ideologies exist. Because as well, sometimes it comes even from a place of love, in quotes, or really concern. Not really love, but concern. Where it's that having a husband and children has changed my life so dramatically. It has made me so much happier. And I worry that you're actually not as happy as you think you can be. Because while I thought I was happy, single and childless, I'm telling you that now that I have children, I am so much happier. So it's like, I want my child to be as happy as me. Like, I get worried when my child is not as happy as me. So I think sometimes there's that extension of self over another self, where it's like, and people do it to their children, they do it to their friends even. But like, I've known you since you were born, I've known you since you were a kid. This is outside you. So how in your life do you find that, like, maybe it's going back to your dissertation, that the vibration, how can you tell that the vibration that you're on is your new rhythm, or it's out of your essential rhythm? How can you tell the difference?
That was a really, really good question. And I think you're right. Like, when we talk about, I'll start with that first. Like, when we talk about like capitalism, of that, there is this like idea of like a white man in a suit who's just like working in like Wall Street or fucking like whatever important financial buildings exist in this world, and is like calling all the shots. But really, like, I think that's like starting with like the body is like such a good example, because it's not really like necessarily what decisions that person's making. It's like how I feel like walking down the street, or like what happens when I walk down the street, or that when I meet someone, or like these day-to-day really minute everyday reactions that like are your world, and like are compromise how you're made to live, or how you feel, what forms of life are possible for you, and what forms of life are possible for every person that exists. And it's like trying to displace the totality of that like capitalism, of like actually what is quite fragmentary, or what is quite ephemeral or changing or shifting according to different paces at different times at different speeds, is so important. And like I really like love that you like brought that, like centered that right now. But like going back to that question of like vibrations, and like how you can, like, there's this idea of there being an essential vibration, and then being like, so it's like a vibration that's more contingent, or that's more fluid or flexible, and that's yours, right? That's kind of what you're trying to say. Is I think like the beauty of vibrations for me, or like what I was trying to talk about in the dissertation, like the Sun Ra quotation I started that section with, was kind of talking about twin vibrations. And there's a thing that like in the title there's this like doubling. So it's like there's never just one vibration. There's never like a vibration, it can never be singular. There's always be multiple. It always exists alongside multiple temporalities. It'll always engage and like change people in different ways. It'll always be like it really resists that like a kind of monoconceptual singular framing of things. And because it's also moving into the sphere that I think is the most contingent, which is the body, it's like you can wake up like feeling good. Next thing you know, you're literally just like in the hospital, or like, just that is like quite an extreme example, but like so many things happen to us through our bodies every single day, and it's like vibrations kind of like engaging with what is most contingent, what is most changing about what it means to like be a human being, or what it means to be alive. I think that there's something about it that suggests that like the ability for us to, what I think that like the characters in novels, or like the situations and stories in novels that's trying to write about was saying, is that there's a power that we have to shape and shift and alter reality, and to alter what it is around us, and that like by tapping into the kind of like vibrations, whether it's in language, or it's in like music, or it's in the rhythm of a car or something, that like we're generating like new energies, new ways of being. And it's also interesting as well, because it kind of goes into like more recent like scientific research, or like quasi like scientific and philosophical research, which is like looking at like how like theories of like resonance, and how resonance creates like consciousness, and how things can have consciousness because of the way they're able to resonate between each other, and resonance is a form of communication, and like vibration is a form of communication. And like also thinking about even like ancient philosophers who thought that like the world was like, or like kind of rhythm of the world is sort of connected to like the larger universal movement of the spheres, and I think that creates this like imaginative space where like as culture practitioners in whatever form we can access the vibrations that exist and like alter them and change them. Because that's what I mean. I guess that's like was kind of meaning by being a lover of vibrations, which is just like this is something that simultaneously connects everyone, but also like we have this power to transform it and like make it mean and do and say different things. I don't know if that really answered your question, but that's what it made me think about.
It does. I love that answer. Because you have something too.
Yeah, as always, like I'm taking everything in, but two things that have just kind of lodged themselves in my mind. I like what you were saying, Sheila, about understanding, some of these words that we throw about, like capitalism and stuff, like re-understanding how, like, in many ways, it's not just it's not just the white man in the suit. Like, there's so many sorts of implications there. And also just like the idea that the pre-colonial or like the ancestral is not necessarily this like past utopia or whatever. Like, it's worth interrogating as well, because that tends to not be the narrative.
Yeah.
I think that
if it was so perfect, it would never have changed. This is the truth. And that is what is hard to hear sometimes, is that if it was so perfect, it would never have changed. But there's a reason why, again, some places were even tricked by just contracts, by just talking, because like there's a space where things can be improved. And when someone suggests something that's going to improve something, you might take it, or you take it and you think it might improve, not like knowing that nothing ever is that utopic. Like, nothing. And that's also what's so painful, because to sometimes test on the fact that utopia will always reside in the imagination. In fact, we need the utopic to actually reside in the imagination so we can imagine. So that we can actually have dreams. Because imagine a life without dreams.
Yeah, that is so, oh my god, literally spitting bars, what? That's really, okay, I'm just gonna like say all the things that made me think about. And I completely agree in the sense that like there's a narrative of like kind of this perfect pastoral utopia that existed in Africa before colonialism, and that came to like ruin and destroy everything, and but it doesn't actually exist anywhere else but within the imagination. But that's also precisely its power to create another kind of future, which might not also be that utopia, but will allow us to like think through the problems and the questions of the now to try and create something else, which is the whole point to me, which is that like, which is also kind of like ultimately why I was trying to argue my dissertation as well, which is that like freedom is not complete. Like this idea of a mythical normative idea of something is not true. But what is powerful about fiction, what is powerful about the imagination, is the ability to creatively reconsider, intervene, alter what is, and show how it's almost somehow incompatible from what is not here yet, from what could not be. And I think that's like what you're saying about something being perfect and something changing. What is true is change. And so there can be something that's so fixed as to be perfect.
Exactly. But that might even be what made the pastoral, ancient or ancestral way of being seem like even perfection, is that there was probably more room to dream. I always say, like, if you think about how, like, when challenges, one of the things I'm currently obsessed with is that video about like this woman that's just singing, "I'm about to go lay down," and then people add like their own like harmonies on top and on top, and by the end there's like a pastor that's preaching from the book of Ecclesiastes about laying down to rest. And I love it because that is what I connect to. Sorry, I'll send it to you. That's what I connect to on an ancestral plane, is that even if we may not be living a singular perfect life, we're all living very diverse, okay lives. Like, we're improving upon them separately. There's always something we're changing. There's always something that we're tweaking. And then I think where the colonial idea came is that actually we need to stop tweaking in small, like, circles.
Yeah.
There is one everlasting answer for all problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't this? I feel like this is what we keep coming back to. Is like, so Gazelle, we read Hour of God together a few months back, and there's one, there's like a little passage where the main character Izulu is talking about holding two things. I can't remember exactly what he was talking about, even though I keep using this example. But he's like holding two things in his hand. It's like a proverb, almost like a phrase that he keeps using. And I feel like that's what like we keep coming back to. Like, how do we hold two things in our two hands? Like the what we've been told is that like you don't, like it's the one thing that you protect and you guard. But then again, I think is what you were saying about like vibrations and how they continue. It's like, how do you hold two things? And then also, like, as you were speaking, Sheila, I was thinking about like, isn't this the answer to the question about satisfaction and disgust? It's that utopic like striving or whatever. Like, this is, it's like the conversation we had about perfection as well, you know,
and incompleteness.
And incompleteness, exactly. Like this striving for perfection and how like it's caused, like how much suffering it's causing.
Yeah, I really, really feel that as well. Like, just how, like, the image of like perfection, or the idea of perfection as like an ideal state, just totally eclipses like other like realities or other ways of being. And like the way that like the colonial message really was that like, yeah, we are on this universal march of history, everyone, like, you're behind, we're at the front, okay, we're gonna like take you to, also not gonna take you, like, it's like, it's class, like, you're supposed to be at the top, you're supposed to be at the bottom, but like there's like an image or a structure of everything that's supposed to conform to this, right? So it's like, we're gonna destroy all the plants that don't look like this one, we're gonna like make everything here look the same, we're gonna raise all this ground, we're gonna
like what? People can get high, ban marijuana. Ban, burn it to the ground.
It's also like really ties into drugs as well, which we haven't really spoken about, but like that. Also this idea of like disgust at satisfaction, or like the disorderliness or the disobedience attached to like drug taking, is also this idea that you are not within this like particular plane of reality anymore. You are not conforming to its rules. You understand?
That's true.
You have decided to just fuck off, and like everyone's like, okay, no, we need to really discipline. Also, like, it's interesting as well, like thinking about opium and drugs and colonialism, and the way that like the regulation of those substances and the sale of them was accelerated, like kind of like colonial capitalism that we exist in now, and still does in lots of other subtle ways. And even like the kind of like the moral economy of all of this as well, which is just so much about putting that onus on the individual and so much on your moral responsibility to act in a certain way when like your entire social structure around you is like so violent towards you or towards people who are poor, people who are, like, all of those things. And it's just like, I think it really goes together. It's like seeking that image of perfection, but actually ignoring all the things that are really wrong.
This is a really interesting point of this conversation, because right before I came in, I was looking at the psychedelic clinic, I think, in California, and I just learned that on June 1st, there's like the basically the first level of being okay with individuals having psychedelics like not be illegal, like mushrooms and MDMA and stuff like that. And it's a very complex conversation for me, because I was just telling someone the other day that I think there's sometimes when I see friends of mine on particular drugs that I don't feel welcome in their arms, because I feel like their soul is gone, like it's missing. Because the next day when I see them, I don't recognize who they were. They don't even want to acknowledge who they were when they were on drugs, and that makes me worried, because anything that, to me, like, when you search for a self that you want to reject, it feels painful. People do that through relationships, they do that through alcohol, and they do that through drugs. But then I also know that drugs are not just one thing. Crystals are not the only drugs to take. There are so many different. In fact, Panadol itself is a drug. Like, there are people who are, and they're all just drowsy. I don't even want to see you, because I say one thing and you're falling asleep. Like, that's not my friend. Do you understand? But I think what I don't like as well is when people will say things like, "Oh yeah, you know that people die from drugs. People die from capitalism. Have you seen how many people are in the hospital for stroke? Like, from their blood vessels being blocked because they literally do not know anything but worry. Worry is the main fuel for so many companies, like shout out consulting. Y'all know y'all run on worry, like 24/7, and it's confirmed, like, by the kind of work that they do. And in fact, not working gives you the anxiety that you won't be preparing yourself to work in that worry environment. So you have to keep working so that you don't remember how to not worry. Because if you remember that there's a state in which you can exist without worry, it doesn't feel good. It reminds you too much that there's actually another opportunity to live on less, and that's not something you want to do. So I just think that, like, for me, that some conversations about certain things, we take out the conversation about excess or restraint or balance, where it's like, is it a conversation about drugs, or is it a conversation about the value with which you approach something that may help you or harm you?
That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's I feel like at this point, I also, because we're getting to the end, I kind of want us to. I really liked and enjoyed what and appreciated earlier about the sort of like your body journal. And I appreciated that, because it's so practical. It's so, okay, you can start doing this. And I feel like, when we have these conversations, like, practicalizing them is one way for them to sort of like percolate into your life and your spirits. And like, I'm just wondering if, thinking about worry, for example, and just like, the goal to exist in a worryless state, even within capitalism, like, are there measures?
Just clapping. Oh my god!
I was like, where's that clapping coming from?
I was honestly like, exist in a worryless state inside of cap. That is a dream of going to dreaming.
It sounds impossible, but like, it is. It's
but
possible.
Even that seems anti-capitalist sometimes, because when you get to the anti-capitalist, like, it seems anti-capitalism, because sometimes when you get to some anti-capitalism camps, there's like, silence is violence. You should not be silent. You should not just be living your life. You have to amplify this. You have to be thinking about this. You have to be thinking about that. And it's like, am I not allowed to be?
But then that's why should itself, I think should is violent language sometimes. And it's like that same thing of like holding two things in your hands, like holding multiple things. Like, can there not be forms of anti-capitalism? Does it have to follow this script?
Yeah, it's like one thing doesn't necessarily have to cancel the other out, but it's like learning how to attend to both of them, even despite their contradictions.
Yeah.
So what values do we need to hold to make that true in our lives?
That's a really good question.
I think the values can manifest in various ways that can sometimes be contradictory, but like the efficiency of them is that like they are all being held by some people on some level.
So like what?
I'm not gonna do examples.
That's what I'm thirsty for. I'm thirsty for those suggestions of values.
It's like, okay, so some people say silence is violence. But what if like me not being silent?
What do people mean about silence is violence? Like, I just sorry, what like more in terms of
do you everything for me?
Say silence is violence. What would they say it at, and what do they mean?
They mean it. So if something happens, let's say in Peru, and they need it amplified, then it becomes silence is violence. Like for instance, that was very popular with the George Floyd situation. And I think it's the question, of course, of well, are they talking to me all the way in Nigeria? Or is that just my own imagination of me wanting to join the conversation? Is it on me to reject that, or is it on them to say, actually, not you guys, America, I'm talking to Americans?
I also I remember during that period that in the midst of all the silence is violence and speak of that like there was an acknowledgement of like self-care in that period, and if engaging with this news felt like it was too much for you, then you kind of owe it to yourself to not do that. So it's like, what can you do? It's also like NSTARS, like, can you be out on the streets? Go out on the streets. Can you be like on social media? Like, just play your part. And I feel like we are all we're cosmically configured for balance. Like everybody has to balance everyone else out, and that's why should is dangerous, in my opinion.
Well, how do we close this?
Gazelle, do you have any thoughts at this point? I was asking the question earlier about practicalities to like ground this conversation. If you have
practical things to ground this conversation,
like in line with the body journal, like that type of stuff. Like if you
body journal. Okay, I've been thinking, so like just thoughts that popping into my head based off like our conversation of like thinking about like the word give is like coming into my head, and I was like saying it out loud. I'm like, oh, that's so cringy. Why did you just say give? But I was thinking about like knowledge or like care or like what we do in the world as a gift that we give each other, and not as something that, and not the way that the world takes from us, and the way that the gift is like the opposite of that, or the hopeful opposite or reversal of that. But it's not about the transaction, is not about the exchange, is not about, it's like trying to create a new form of reciprocity. And the way that I think that like creating things or doing things like can be a way of giving to one another, show us what we need. I think that's like the first thought that comes into my head, is like, what can we give each other? What do we need? And also like asking, if you go from the question of like, what are the practical things that we can do to create a sort of new value system, is like the question of like, what do we actually need? What can we do away with? What do we not have? I feel like questions always lead to more questions, and I'm like, oh, I have one practical thing that we could do. I'll definitely think about it, and if I have any more ideas, I will send them to you. Maybe what is something that I am actually trying to do now?
Stretch more.
I'm definitely trying to stretch more.
That's a big one, yeah.
Stretch more. I'm definitely trying to drink more water, and like making myself drink several cups of water a day. But I'm trying to like write a project about like Igbo women and their lives and their histories, and like thinking more about it like on a historical like level, but also like a creative level as well. And what can that, going back into like the cosmology of things as well, that really made me think a lot when you mentioned that just at the end, because my dissertation is also sort of about cosmology and stuff, and just like thinking about what we can learn from from different cosmologies and different like ways of framing understanding the world, and bringing that into contact with writing or music or whatever it is that we do. Maybe that can be a practical step, thinking about stuff like that. Trying to find out new languages for things, new words, new ways of saying things. Maybe that can shape how we consider the world. Why does this word not exist in this language? Why does it exist in this one? What can it, thinking about it from this perspective, give us? Yeah. Also, turning off your phone from time to time. Staring at a wall. Things like that. Going on a walk, getting lost. Just it's not that safe an idea. So I'm like, don't get
walk around that compound. Okay.
That would not be good. But okay, yeah, those are my suggestions.
Thank you so much, Gazelle. This has been a very exciting conversation.
Yes.
Honestly, I've had so much fun. It's been so nice to talk about this with you guys. I've learned so much from both of you. It's been honestly mind blowing.
Great. Have a
Thank you.
day.
Thank you. You too. Sending you slow vibes, slow healing vibes
Thank you.
From me. You hope you get to chat or do something again. It was really nice.
Yes.
Yes.